What's a real thing that you always thought was fake when you were younger? Tumbleweed. I thought it was only in the Western movies. Try living in Arizona. Every time I have a gunfight in front of the saloon, one rolls by. Night skies where you can see hundreds of stars. Light pollution is a bitch. Not me, but my grandmother. When I was younger and desperately wanted to be a paleontologist, she always looked at me like she thought I was nuts. A couple of years ago, it turned out that she thought dinosaurs weren't real, and were something that were made up for TV shows like that Pokemon thing. When I was a child, I had no idea that people lived in big cities. I thought they were just where people worked and people attended professional sporting events, and that they were just empty at night. I'm from Norway, and someone convinced me that the indigenous people from the northern parts called Sami were a mythological people. It took years and a Sami classmate for me to realize they are real. Bed bugs. My mom would always say, "Nighty-night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite." I had no idea they were real until I was in my 30s. That snowflakes actually look the way they are portrayed. I grew up in a temperate area with no snow, and just kind of assumed that snowflakes were just balls of frozen water and the intricate designs were just artistic interpretation, like stars don't really have 5 points. It wasn't until I moved to the East Coast for college and a snowflake landed on me and I got to look at it up close that I realized each snowflake was actually beautiful and unique. When I was a small child, I thought kings, queens, etc. didn't actually exist and were made up for fairy tales because, dragons and magic and stuff like that was made up. Surely all the other things must have been, too. Imagine my shock when I was 4 or 5 and I learned that all those are real. Although my child self still had very inaccurate ideas about royalty. I saw so many fake palm trees as a kid growing up in New England. Now I go to school in California and I still catch myself assuming the palms are fake. Didn't mean to be so misleading. There is not a bounty of fake palm trees hidden around New England. But growing up, I used to see fake ones placed in thematic places like amusement parks and restaurants. I don't know if this counts, but I always thought that O'Reilly's Auto Parts was a restaurant. I begged my dad to eat there. He eventually caved and took me to the auto store, and I told him that he warned them that I was coming and had them change the whole restaurant to an auto parts store just to mess with me. I was 100% certain that the joke "why did the chicken cross the road" had a different ending than "to get to the other side BC." I couldn't understand how it was funny. I always thought that the joke was that the person being asked was gonna assume a crazy answer and the "get to the other side" answer was meant to catch them off guard with how simple it is. So when I found out about Father Christmas, I thought that meant reindeer weren't real. It was only when I thought my boyfriend was taking the mick at the zoo saying, "Let's go and see the reindeer," that I found out the real truth. Not me, but my roommate thought turnips were a fictional vegetable until college. Not me, and I'm probably late to this, but I moved to Key West and am now dating a girl who grew up there. For those not familiar, Key West is a 6-square-mile island 90 miles south of Miami, so agriculture is literally non-existent there. She told me a story about her younger brother, who when he was about 5 to 6 years old went on a road trip up to Orlando with the family. They passed a field and he was looking out the window and saw a field full of cows. He looks up at his mom and in disbelief says, "Cows are real?" He legit though cows were like unicorns, made-up creatures. Other religions. I was very sheltered and thought everyone was Christian, because duh. The fun thing about growing up Jewish is you never for a second believe that everyone is Jewish. Pirates. I literally thought that they were fictional beings until I was around 22. The Tasmanian Devil. Thought Looney Tunes just made it up. Electrolytes. I thought that they were made up by sports drink companies to sell more drinks. Me being adopted. My brother didn't know he was adopted until he was 16. He is my half-brother, and we had no idea since my dad raised us both by himself. We just thought our mom had left when I was born and that was it. But what actually had happened was she had gotten pregnant by some meth head while she was with my father, and my father didn't know until he was born. She told him she was giving up my brother for adoption, and my dad went berserk, got custody of my brother, and kept it a secret for years. He gets a call from my drunk mother on his 16th birthday, and she broke the news. Completely shattered him and caused a lot of trust issues. Flat earthers. Puffins. I thought they were fictional until I went to Iceland and was pleasantly surprised. My boyfriend, from UK, thought polygraphs were fake until I, from USA, mentioned that our police use them in criminal investigations. He literally was like, "Lie detector tests are real? And it's legal?" That was the day I learned that they are mainly only used in the US. And their results are not admissible in court. And their biggest benefit is scaring people into telling the truth. So when I was 8, my dad and I watched Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. I didn't really get the time travel part of the plot, so I spent many years convinced that humpback whales were extinct. Parents who love their children thought it was just on TV and that all my friends' parents were just pretending to be happy because I was a guest in their house and would drop the act as soon as I left. I get that it's real now, but it's still unnerving and uncomfortable to talk to my coworkers with kids' grandkids and hear them say how much they love them, miss them when they grew up and moved out, that they talk all the time, can't wait to see them for the holidays, etc. I had the opposite. I thought jackalopes, the rabbit with antlers, were real until I was 19 years old. I just thought they were native to New Mexico, Arizona, or something. They seem like such a real animal. Who thought a cool mythical animal to create is a rabbit with antlers? You have total freedom to make up whatever you want and you choose that? Platypuses, they just looked way too mishmashed together to be a natural thing. But baby platypuses, platypodes are the cutest things ever. When they first sent platypus remains back to Europe from Australia, European zoologists thought it was a mishmashed hoax too. Racism. I grew up in Maine, where we have a 1.8% minority rate. We had the black kid in high school and I never saw any open racism towards the kid. And to an 18-year-old from rural Maine, if I didn't experience or see it, it probably wasn't real. I went to college, grew up, married, kids of my own, and I'm friends with a few people who are minorities and I've asked them outright if they've ever experienced racism. Much to my surprise, racism is very much alive. And now that I'm older, I've realized that of course a middle-class white dude from rural Maine would never have witnessed it. But holy shit, have a couple black friends over to your place, and you'll become very aware of who the racists in your town are. Pittsburgh. My dad would say it, and I'd laugh my ass off thinking of a town named after armpits. I always thought it was a fake place. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I went to Disneyland once or twice a year throughout my childhood. When I visited the East Coast for the first time, I discovered that fireflies are real. I was shocked. I thought they were some magical insect that Walt Disney dreamed up, as he had fake ones twinkling in the trees in Disneyland. I also grew up near Disneyland and I thought everyone had a Disneyland just down the freeway from their home. Homeschoolers. Actual homeschooler graduate here. I have my college degree, AMA. Did your school have a school slut? And a school idiot? No, that was next door. Totally thought Transylvania was a made-up place for years. Vampires are pretend, and they come from Transylvania. So it was logical that the place they came from wasn't real? The streets always being wet at nighttime in movies. Being from AZ, I always thought that was bullshit. I used to think, why are the streets always wet like it had just rained in movies? Streets are always dry as fuck at night. Then I went on a trip to MO when I was older and the streets were wet there at night, and I was thinking, wow, just like in the movies. Van Gogh cutting off his ear. I thought that was an urban legend like George Washington chopping down the cherry tree before I saw At Eternity's Gate at age 41. Even then, I was skeptical until I read it was true in the reviews. I used to think people only died if they were murdered, did it themselves. I was 7, maybe 8 when I found out one day my grandparents would die of old age, and I cried for a long time. BC, I thought people just lived forever until they got murdered. When we were little, my mom would sometimes sing Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede, and we all thought she made it up, because she mostly sang the chanting part at the beginning. Me and my siblings were amazed when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and we heard the soundtrack and realized it was real. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.